That, man, if you don't learn how to be mentally stronger than the illness, it can hold you back in so many ways. You got people who they either did or in jail. Me, it took me later along the lines not to be a statistic.
Baltimore has always had this very weird schizophrenia between doing good and not doing good.
Anything that's negative, like that I hear in a stat, I don't get surprised anymore. Like when I hear in Baltimore, 97% of us who are born in poverty die in poverty, it's not shocking. America doesn't fuck with us. I get it. Like, I understand. I get it. Like, I get it.
You can go through neighborhoods and you'll see the same vacant homes. You'll see the same trash in the alleys. And we're talking about, it's like a hamster wheel. We talk about the same stuff over and over and over again.
There's an emergency in Baltimore, Detroit, Flint, Chicago, Birmingham, St. Louis, Milwaukee, all of our hyper-segregated cities. Lead poisoning is a root cause. If you get rid of lead, you can address a whole lot of issues.
Lead doesn't know race, it doesn't know gender, it doesn't know income. Simply put, the toxic legacy of lead is so strong, kids in Baltimore are still being poisoned today.
I have been living with this poison for as long as I can remember. I have not known how this poison has affected me for as long as I can remember. I've never ever received any education behind a poison that's supposed to be killing me.
The whole lead poisoning epidemic is, I feel like it had to be some type of setup, you know. Put these people here, they're eating paint off the walls. Now this is gonna create a whole generation of people growing up with this issue.
It's like a social laboratory. We put you in these environments and then we want to see how you behave. Unfortunately, in this society, it becomes a matter of tourism.
The quote is, if you ask people who live here, Black people, is that everybody has lead.
It's a jungle out there. Lead poisoning is lurking to get your little ones. Lead paint chips for them to nibble on. Lead dust for them to breathe. So keep little ones away from peeling paint. Wash their toys and wash their hands before they eat. And damp mop often. One more thing. Have young ones tested for lead poisoning. Take care of your pride and joy. Get ahead of lead.
Like new blue jeans and old memories, some things were made to fade, but not Dutch boy, not the kid, not on your life, no way, Jose.
I have a little sister at home. She don't eat the paint, but she plays with it, and I would like to know if there's any danger towards that. A child who is eating paint can die, can become blind, mentally retarded for life.
You're looking for colors in the red family. Just flip the Alvo open to the red tab. And there you'll find all the reds grouped on double-page spreads of large, actual paint chips.
Over 400,000 of our children between age 1 and 6 suffer from lead paint poisoning, according to the United States Public Health Service. Almost 90% of them were poisoned by eating paint chips or putty containing lead.
To cut lucite is so easy to use. It's almost like having an army of painters on the job.
Even painting the ceilings a breeze with lucite. It won't rip or spatter like ordinary paint. And lucite is pre-mixed, so there's no stirring or thinning. Just lift the lid and paint away.
Silent epidemic lead poisoning is impairing the mental development of American children. The Federal Center for Disease Control calls it the most common and societally devastating environmental disease of young children. The statistics are overwhelming.
Even after repeated cleanups, your woodwork and walls stay beautiful with ChemGlow for kitchen and bathroom walls and your finest woodwork. Comes in hundreds of beautiful colors, in medium luster or velvet finish. Look for this Cover the Earth trademark, your assurance of the highest quality in paints for home and industry. Sherwin-Williams Paints.
In the early 1900s, when companies like Sherwin-Williams were looking to enter the market, there had been studies already showing that the impact of lead-based paint had an impact on pregnancy, had an impact on mortality of children, and that it was poisonous. We know that in 1922, the United States was the only developed country in the world that did not sign the League of Nations ban on the use of lead-based paint in residential housing. That was 1922. We know that in 1937, governments in the United States were mandating the use of lead-based paint in low-income housing, knowing that the League of Nations had banned its use, knowing that there were studies, knowing that there was a historical record already that lead was literally killing people.
Any one of the 1,322 colors can be made from just one of 3 base paints. There's a white base for the light or pastel.
I mean, they marketed lead-based paint for many, many years in the early 20th century. And they advertised as being a good product, a safe product, while at the same time they were getting information from their research indicating that it had danger to it and a danger to children for it.
Mixing the colorant into the base paint is so simple, a child can do it. Just press all the colorant from the tubes. The mixing takes less time.
Everybody in the lead industry was trying to keep all these dangers of lead hidden and hushed up. I remember even the first recorded lead paint death of a child was in Baltimore City at Johns Hopkins in 1917.
The result is a kitchen of breathtaking beauty and lasting good taste. But let's look at some other decorating products.
The effects of toxic lead have been sort of known for a long time, and even in the early 1900s, you had research done at Johns Hopkins that basically showed like this is something we don't want anywhere near our children. There's a 1955 letter, for instance, where a lead industry official is writing the health commissioner of Baltimore, and at the end of the letter he's like, "Merry Christmas," especially to those little human rodents in Baltimore. The reference being that they're eating lead off the wall like rats.
$2.98. That's how much money it will take to buy a gallon of paint. It's Friday morning and Tom Havens is to buy the paint after school today. To make the purchase, his father gives him a $5 $5 bill.
Lead paint was a desirable paint for everybody in all kinds of income levels. And so it's on a lot of surfaces in all kinds of houses.
Lead gets into a child's blood through consuming it. So that might be, in the case of paint, that comes from a child potentially running their hands through dust and then that dust getting in their mouth, or consuming a paint chip, for example.
You can take a paint chip the size of a nickel, and when that breaks down to the lead particulate, you can poison a house that's 3,000 square feet.
Toxic quantities of lead-based materials can still be found on walls, ceilings, and woodwork. Peeling surfaces make this lead accessible to children, especially infants. Much of the housing in America's cities built before 1940 has become urban ghettos. These homes, now seriously deteriorated, are full of chipped, flaking plaster and peeling lead paint.
Almost every house has lead paint in it. The problem is that any just common occurrence in a house, like let's say you open and closing a window, that friction is caused in opening and closing the window creates the breakaway and dust that then gets on floors or window sills. That's the concern for like child consumption, is that it's something just so like reachable for them.
We do know it's irreversible. We do know for some children in this country, it means that they will not compete as well in the classroom. It has a burden on the heart, it has a burden on the kidneys, it has a burden on brain development mostly. That has manifested itself in reading disabilities because lead attacks the reading and reasoning ability of the brain. It's why we talk about studies that show shorter fuses and sometimes more aggressive behavior by someone who's had a consistent lead ingestion.
So we already knew that lead had a direct effect on behavioral issues because, I mean, if you're talking about the brain, so it's going to impact decision making. It's going to impact cognitive function. It's going to impact emotional intelligence. So it's going to impede all of that. So it's going to lower your filter. So it's going to lower your ability to manage your states. It just makes sense that lead would be a direct relative cause of behavioral issues in crime and violence.
I don't want to say they act crazy because that's kind of like extreme, but like they act different. Their brain kind of operates different, and the way they react to problems is usually different.
I end up just like touching a fire and getting burnt. Just keep making the same mistake, until you make that one mistake that's like life changing, and then it's too late. My mom got me tested when I was young, like maybe 3 or 4. When I started going to school, I was having issues in school and they were trying to put me on medication. They told her that I wasn't able to be in the school unless I was on Ritalin or in like a special ed class because of my behavior problems. So she got me tested because she refused to put me on medication. And when she got me tested, they said I had high levels of lead. So they tested the house that I was living in and it had lead inside of the house. When I was in 5th grade, I had a teacher and she used to tell my mother, like, I can't deal with her in my class. Like, I just can't deal with her. I just didn't have the attention span to stay in class. I wasn't interested. You have like some type of disconnect to, you know, like what's going on around you. My troubled childhood was more so because of the non-capability to focus. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't, I didn't think. So when you have lead and you're younger, it's tougher to deal with it because it's hard to think. You do your actions and then you think later. Assault, second degree, felony, malicious destruction. I can go on. These are other charges too. Malicious destruction, second degree assault, trespassing. When I was 12, that's when I caught my first charge. My first charge was like in a disorderly conduct. It's easy to get in the system, hard to get out. There, at 12, I caught another charge. This time it was like a drug charge. I was just, wanting to be out there. I wasn't listening. I had a great mom, she was great. She was awesome. She did the best she could raising 5 kids single. I just, couldn't really focus on school and things like that. So I wanted to be outside in the streets and, I wanted to be fast because school was just not a focus.
Yeah, we was bad little kids too, though. We definitely was. We definitely got into a lot of stuff. Like, we was skipping school in elementary school. Like, I'll never forget my first time I got in trouble because my mother used to do daycare and she had caught me skipping school.
I started getting locked up for like assaults and robberies and things like that, which would land me at 14 in the group home. Before I went to the group home, I was in juvenile jails. I was on house arrest. By the age of 15, I was put out of the group home because I ended up beating someone in the head with a pot because they stole a CD from me. At 15, I was arrested. I was charged with motor vehicle theft, which carries a 5-year sentence, so I was given the max. I went through a psychiatrical evaluation. They said that I was old enough to and mentally understandable of the crimes that I committed. I used up all the services in the juvenile system. So 15, they waived me from the juvenile system to the adult system. At 16, I was moved to an adult maximum security system in Jessup. I was given 5 years with lifers behind bars. Once it hit you, like, dang, now I got 5 years. Came home, still doing the same stuff. It just took for me to realize, like, my mother's not gonna always be here for me to get my life together. And I still struggle with it. I've had a few jobs since I came home. Now I'm in a stable job. But it was just hard. It was just like a lot of hit and misses, a lot of touching the fire, getting burnt, before I was able to like try and get it together. And I'm still learning every day. In my case, I was given a second chance. So, when I came home, I decided I wanted to go to college. And that was hard, but the advice I would give a child that has lead is to just try and be focused, stay focused, find something you love, find something you're passionate about, and then stick to it, do it, go all in.
Baltimore is a Category 5 hyper-segregated city. And I say Category 5 is just like a hurricane. The scale that a hurricane, Category 5 is the most intense, the most devastating. And Baltimore is in that category. This racial segregation then impacts all kinds of policies, practices, systems, and budgets. So it's pervasive. And that's how these sort of predatory policies and practices end up actually extracting wealth and creating poverty.
Here is the shame of our American cities. Here is the face of our cities we hide. Endless blocks of houses scarred beyond belief, overcrowded fire traps, tenements, shacks, human dwellings unfit for human beings to live in.
A lot of people think of poverty as if it's something intrinsic. I argue that poverty in these hyper-segregated cities is actually created by a lot of external forces that are operating in a punitive and very sort of predatory way.
Baltimore, sadly, is one of the pioneers of restrictive residential covenants. Those were documents placed on residential deeds that said to the white buyer, you are pledging that you're not going to sell this house to an African American buyer next. And those started going into effect in the 1920s. So the same neighborhoods that were deemed the most valuable by the federal government were also the ones that were restricted. The residents couldn't be Black. And so Black people were restricted to a certain number of neighborhoods near the inner city, and those were the same ones that were redlined a little bit later. So as white families were allowed to move out into other suburban neighborhoods, Black people couldn't. It was not until 1948 that the Supreme Court ruled those restrictive residential covenants unconstitutional. So for the first half of the 20th century, there was just a very limited number of neighborhoods that Black people could live in.
Redlining has been a devastating force in Black communities. Really, it all started when the federal government helped create these maps called the residential security maps. These maps basically graded the risk for lending for banks and whether or not the federal government would insure those mortgages for those banks. And so you had 4 different colors on that map, in fact: red, blue, yellow, and green.
It talked about the areas that were safe to lend, ones that were a little less safe to lend, ones that were transitional, and banks should question whether those were going to be safe investments. And then the neighborhoods that were red in their code, in their color code, those were called redlined neighborhoods. And the red neighborhoods in Baltimore are the ones in the central city. They were older housing stock. There were white neighborhoods that were redlined in Baltimore City, but almost all of the Black neighborhoods in Baltimore City in 1937 were redlined.
In redlined communities, again, people don't have capital, but you also have slumlords that are able to operate with impunity in these communities. The housing market is basically ripe for exploitation, particularly because of the people who live in those communities and the racist, sort of white supremacist attitudes that were prevalent in America at the time. So there's this general disregard for Black neighborhoods and the Black people living in those neighborhoods. And the government, they condoned this. They sent this signal through their policies that this was okay. And so it sort of, redlining sort of was the foundation, sort of the backdrop that allowed these sort of predatory and neglectful practices to proliferate, and later for this sort of lead poisoning crisis to metastasize.
My name is Robert Queen. I'm a fashion designer in Baltimore, Maryland. I was diagnosed with lead paint poisoning when I was probably about 12 years old, maybe. I can't remember who specifically, but I'm sure that someone in my family mentioned that it's like a joke, like yo got lead or something like that. I guess I kind of grew up like any other kid in Baltimore. I grew up in a house with like 5 people. We grew up not having really like a lot of money. I still had a family, like everybody was like, still like loving and everything. My parents still did the best that they could do for me to like have everything I needed. My father worked all day till like the sun went down. He would work sometimes after midnight, be right back up at 6 a.m. I didn't think I would be a designer for a long time. It just came about when I started like doing creative things for people, and I realized that it was something that I was good at. So I decided to keep going with it and turn it into, a career. Oh, these are cool. This is as you know, I do like animal print. This is like a jean button down that I had thrifted and revamped. That's something I really like to do. It's like actually what I really started out doing, like revamping a lot of things. And I got this jean button down from the thrift. It's oversized. And I decided to add like this is cheetah print, people. It's cheetah print. It's a difference between cheetah and leopard. I've never really let it get in the way of like things I wanted to do in life, because I didn't let the narratives of certain people that they put out about lead, the things that they mention that will hold me back. In some cases, you have people telling people with lead, oh, you're not gonna never be able to accomplish this, or you're gonna be retarded, you're gonna learn slow, and whole time they could, be a better person because of lead, or they could literally be smarter than the next person, or learn faster, or it can make them work harder. I don't let it hold me back. I can't take those things as like excuses or reasons to not go harder, or reasons to not be what I want to be in life, because I've accomplished things that most people couldn't accomplish with lead. So it's like, if I can do this, I can do that.
Kennedy Krieger Institute stands accused of knowingly exposing African-American children to lead poisoning. As reporter David Collins tells us, what began as a study to reduce lead paint exposure in old homes is now the basis of a lawsuit. David?
Rod, this class action lawsuit claims Kennedy Krieger enticed as many as 100 children into living in lead-tainted housing for a research study and provided no treatment to them. Kennedy Krieger says the study helped to remove children from high-risk environments into safer ones, and that the research led to significant reforms.
The suit states the hospital used as many as 100 children as guinea pigs, that the institute enticed them to live in lead-tainted housing to assess the success of lead paint or lead dust abatement measures. The suit alleges a racial bias as well, stating Kennedy Krieger only selected low-income and minorities for its study.
There are people who are committed to Baltimore. That means those are people who care. We care about lead poisoning. We care about poverty. We care about those things. And then there are people in Baltimore who are invested in Baltimore. And those are people who are profiting from the disparities of others. Who do we point the finger at? Landlords, government. I mean, everybody has a hand in this. It's kind of hard pointing your finger at somebody else without something being pointed back at you.
When I first showed up to meet with legislators in the Maryland legislature, when I walked in 1994, 72% of the legislature reported that they were either rental property owners or investors. Property owners had undue influence on how laws were made in the city council, how laws were made in the state legislature, how laws were made federally, they had even more influence on whether or not there would be enforcement of standards. We have had for a long time in the city of Baltimore what's called Regulation 5, which says that if a child is poisoned by lead, there will be a lead violation notice on the property and a scope of work to clean that up. Between 1986 and 2000, there were 0 enforcements of those lead violation notices. In lower income neighborhoods, in neighborhoods of color, there was less political will to do enforcement, and it had damning effects, not only on our children, which is so critically important, but upon the health of neighborhoods and how neighborhoods began to deteriorate.
If I'm a person that's taking taxes from citizens, if I'm a person that's a leader, if I'm in government, if this is my city, if I'm the mayor, if I'm the person that runs this board, that board, if I'm an elected official, it's my responsibility to make sure these problems are addressed. If you know it's a problem and you have some type of power and you choose to remain silent, you're a part of that problem.
We were the ones, public health professionals, we were the ones who dropped the ball. They didn't go in there and say, well, we helped create the problem, so we're going to help, get rid of it. No, they just said, well, as long as it's below a certain threshold. The blame is on the people in power, the people who put the lead in the paint, the people who had the professional training, our health department, the Baltimore City Health Department, one of the longest operating health departments in America. They failed. They failed our communities. They failed red line Black communities. They failed Black residents.
If you're only dealing with an issue when it hits you in your face and you still got other issues happening, you're going to constantly be in a reactionary mood. It's the system. It's when you are underinvested, when you think, oh, it's not going to have that great of an impact, so we don't have to deal with that right now. Oh, we don't have the money for this right now. It's well, my child isn't impacted by that, so I don't have to worry. No, we're all impacted. Anytime you consistently, abandon something and not giving it the care that it needs, harm is going to come. And it's just when and what is it going to look like? What is this harm going to be?
They had signs on them. I think it just said don't drink. I didn't find out about the lead being in the water probably till middle school, where I could actually understand what lead was.
As a child, I was always curious as to why we couldn't drink the water anymore. And I always was curious as to, well, if we're not allowed to drink the water anymore, what happened to the children who did drink the water? And I was one of those kids. For years, I had no idea, and no one ever. It's not like they had sat all the children down in the auditorium and told them, or even had a conversation with the parents, which should have been done, but no one said anything. The water wasn't even shut off until a parent made the initiative to press down on Baltimore City schools and have them test the water. It wasn't something that was done from Baltimore City schools themselves.
We have a generation of young people who've never used a water fountain. We still got lead in our pipes. You should be handling that. That should be something that is on the forefront. We know that is a form of environmental racism. We know that it has impacted generations of people. That's something that has to stay in our legislators' mind, in our community's mind. It is not over because you got a plastic bag over the water fountain in your school and you're just saying, well, we'll just bring in water. The pipes are still terrible.
So I want you to bring both of your legs together, and just bring them very straight towards me. Yep. All right. The things that I've learned in life thus far, I'm only 26, but everything in life is a joke. We're living in a dream, and I think that people make big deals about things that just aren't that important. My childhood was, I think, honestly, like most of the people in Baltimore City, I grew up in what you can call the projects. My mom, after I was born, she was paralyzed from the waist down, so she was unable to work, and we grew up pretty lower middle class. Get that. And this arm, could you put it up here? From what I can remember, I had a doctor's appointment, and I believe that they tested me for lead. My mom, of course, wasn't open with it about me, and it wasn't until I was maybe 8 years old that she actually told me that I did have lead poisoning. I don't think that she took it as, my child needs help or anything like that. She just thought it was, something regular, I guess. Lead poisoning, okay, she'll be fine. It's not something that I feel like is taken very seriously, other than maybe people who don't know about it. I think they take it more seriously than the people who actually have it. Not to say that, it's not a serious issue. I'm sure there are serious cases of lead poisoning, but from my experience and what I've seen in others, I don't think it's one of the most important issues in our city. There's so many more things to worry about other than lead poisoning. When I was a little girl, I lived on Boyd Street. It's on the west side. Okay, if anybody knows Boyd Street, it's a little ass street about this big. Okay, tons of houses on it. Across from my house was a lot, and the lot probably had thousands of drug needles in it. I'm just a kid. I'm outside with my friends, and I think I went and got some of my mom's gloves, and me and my sister and my friends, we went outside, and it was about 3 or 4 of us. We went outside and we picked up and cleaned out the lot. Just a random act of, I don't know. As a child, I just cared about stuff. And, we went over there and everyone was upset, no, don't go over there, don't clean that up. It's drug needles and stuff. Of course, we didn't know, we get stuck by a drug needle, anything could happen. We didn't know that, but we just wanted to clean up the neighborhood. We didn't like living like that. Didn't like living where you go to the playground and it's glass everywhere from people drinking and beer bottles, and we didn't like living like that. We tried to do something about it. The city's not gonna do it. The city doesn't give a fuck about poor people. Poor people have to give a fuck about poor people.
The plaintiff suffers a learning disability, shortened attention span, impulsivity, hyperactivity, behavior and social problems, and extreme difficulty reading. The plaintiff's IQ has been diminished significantly. So originally my lead levels, I had very high lead levels, to where as though the courts were suing for $1 million. I end up like dealing with the lawyer from behind bars because I was locked up. And then when I came home, like around 23, I received a $4,517 payout, which was nowhere near $1 million. $4,500, $4,500, that cannot. When they gave me that, I took it and said, "Oh yeah, $4,500." Instead of like thinking like, $4,500 for a sore childhood, like a hurt childhood, like all the pain that was inflicted on me because of this lead. My childhood was corrupted and my childhood was taken from me.
All lead cases are tragedies. And the problem with our court system is that no matter how much money that you get for a child or young adult, you can't turn back the clock. The one thing that you can say about money is that, well, it won't get rid of the problem, it'll make the child or young adult's life easier.
I know of families who have intentionally taken paint off the walls, and children have ingested those paint chips. And the family's not realizing that, yes, you may be able to get extra resources if your child is tested and they say that they have lead in their system, but do you realize what you're doing? Like the overall impact that this could have on your child. And so when you hear things of that nature, I get it because we're living in survival mode. Survival mode will have you engage in things that will take care of you for the moment, but can cause great harm for you in the long term. And I think that's what happens sometimes. And even though everybody may not understand it, but it's real.
The statute of limitations expires the day before the child is 21. So what you want to do is you want to have as much of a track record as possible before you have to file suit. So if Johnny is a lead poisoned child, how did Johnny do in school? Did Johnny graduate? You also have all the economic loss that the child will sustain in the future, from not being able to advance far in school, not being able to get a good job, not being able to get a job at all. I mean, generally, when you're thinking about the highest type of reward that a child can get in Maryland, or Baltimore City, it's probably about $1.5 million.
When you see these kids get hit with these large amounts of money, that reasoning comes into play when you see some of the things they do with it. I know another one of my friends from the neighborhood got his check. He got killed. He's dead now. But when he got his lead check, we all went to Miami. We bought our own plane tickets and all that. But when we got down there, he paid for everything, like everything. Busting champagne like they was ready to stop selling it.
Yes, let's give them this money so they can run through it. They can't say we never did shit for them. Okay, yeah, we did put lead in the paint, but we gave them money to, cover that up. That is the biggest joke of lead poisoning. This is a lot of money we're talking about. I mean, to any average Joe, it's a lot of money. I've seen people run through the money in a span of 3 months. Just going off, spending the money all crazy.
One of the things we always try to do was to, as best we could, look out for the children for their life beginning after they got to settlement. We would try to get the children to agree to a structured settlement, because a structured settlement would then give them so much money a month, hopefully for the rest of their lives, and prevent them or a family member getting their hands on the money and spending on something crazy. But then also you have a lot of these companies that are out to buy structured settlements, and they offer, you know, a young adult 10 or 15 cents on the dollar for the structured settlement pass. And if all of a sudden you give a child, you know, I'll give you $25,000 in cash, and that's more money than that young adult could ever even dream of having. When if they just kept in the structure, they would get so much more money.
Freddie Gray.
Gray's life was marked by financial hardship from the very beginning. His mother and stepfather raised Freddie and his siblings in a home so squalid they want a settlement from the landlord over lead paint exposure.
According to the court documents, crumbling lead paint, holes in the wall, lots of dust that was suspected to be contaminated with lead. They made the connection to problems he ultimately had in school. He was put in special ed classes. His sisters testified that they had to repeat grades.
I just want us to be very careful when we give the narratives of people. And it's almost like you put this black mark on people and you determine who they're going to be if they have lead in their system.
Gaines, they say, used a legally purchased 12-gauge pistol-grip shotgun to hold them at bay, showing it as soon as they arrived to serve a warrant for minor charges. Police say after 6 hours of negotiation, she threatened to kill them. An officer fired first.
She in turn fired several rounds at us of double-aught buck. No officer was struck. Our personnel returned 3 rounds of fire, striking her and killing her.
Gaines' motive unknown. We do know she suffered from lead poisoning, which can interfere with rational thinking. According to records from a lawsuit she'd filed against several landlords, a doctor said Corinne was exposed to a sea of lead when she lived in lead-contaminated housing. She does have a neurodevelopmental disability and brain damage. And her mother said in a disposition she didn't want to listen. She has poor decision-making skills. I think she needs guidance. All characteristics, advocates say, of the effects of lead poisoning.
There has been this thought that every kid who gets lead poisoning is doomed to aggressive behavior, violent behavior, the juvenile justice system, failure in the classroom. And that's not the case either.
When they start hearing about somebody who's been impacted by lead, it is somebody who is to be perceived as a criminal, perceived as done something wrong in society. And so if that doesn't create this self-fulfilling prophecy of, wow, if I got lead in my system, I'm going to be like that. Oh, well, this is why I act like this. This is why I am this. My mama said I got lead. My grandmother says I have lead. My teacher says I have lead. So I'm supposed to, this is how I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be someone who's violent. I'm supposed to be somebody who doesn't do well academically.
If a child has lead, there's a, they'll point to a kid and say, oh, they're acting crazy because they got lead. Oh, Johnny's not going to be able to do anything because he's got lead, so we're not asking him. And I think we all bear blame in that.
To me, those who have been able to still be able to thrive and learn and help society, you have to give all those narratives. You can't just start talking about lead when someone is being perceived to have done something wrong in society.
Once you get that label on you, a child is thinking, damn, I have lead poisoning. I can't go to college, or this is why I act the way I do. Obviously, this is it. Maybe I need some medicine for it. They just start becoming something that they don't even know that they are.
My name is Angel King Wilson. I'm a writer and an educator in Baltimore City. I am the youngest of 9 children. I have 6 brothers and 2 sisters. And growing up, I saw my brother sell drugs. And my mother wasn't present because of a nervous breakdown that she had when I was 5 years old. So at a young age, I saw a lot. I would describe my childhood as a sheltered poverty. I was very aware that we were poor, but when you are poor in a community, it makes things easier. I remember just always having that survival mode when we were kids and just doing anything that we had to have a shelter over our head and food on the table. All right. Good morning, everyone. I hope that y'all had a good weekend. Welcome to English 101. Today is October 15, 2020. And my name is Professor Wilson. And I was diagnosed with lead poisoning at 2 years old. I don't remember not knowing. I don't remember what life was like not being diagnosed with lead poisoning. I never ever thought about lead because it wasn't just me. If I couldn't get square roots, it wasn't just me in class who couldn't get square roots. If I didn't do well on the spelling test or got a 60 on the spelling test, 3 girls over there also got 60s. So I never ever felt that I was stupid or behind, because the truth of the matter is I wasn't. You tell a person that they have lead poisoning, you tell a parent that their child has lead poisoning, and you tell the child, and they already know automatically what that means. I'm amazed when people who are so experts on lead are talking about it, and then I walk into the room and I say, it's me. You're talking about me. I have lead. And everything that they were talking about, they are almost embarrassed. No one is doing research on the adults with lead who are overcoming this stigma. And so that leaves these people to continue to believe that I'm stupid, I have lead, I am whatever they said I am, instead of internalizing what you know in your heart and who you are and being that. Nobody, no doctor, no lawyer, no parents, no teacher has ever said that lead is affecting me in this way and I should go to this and this treatment. I really gotta just shrug my shoulders and move on with life. Like, I just can't be out here saying that I have lead when nobody even cares.
If we really care about every child competing in the classroom, arriving in the classroom healthy and ready to learn, wanting to have an equal opportunity moving forward, we cannot turn a blind eye or underinvest in preventing lead poisoning. It's the one thing that I truly believe we can deliver on the promise and we can solve in this country in a very achievable, doable fashion and in the not too distant future.
We spend more on policing, the Baltimore Police Department, than we do on health, housing, arts, parks, civil rights, and workforce development combined. That's an apartheid budget. We're spending more on social control than we are on supporting life. And I think the money, you gotta follow the money. You know, the money tells you where the priorities are.
Certain communities don't get resources, and people don't care about certain people. And the people, as much as we want change, the people who can make change are not interested in the change that we want to make.
I don't think there's anybody that's coming to save us. So it's like we have to kind of take this moment now and into the future into our own hands. Whether we have the resources to fix it or not, I think you got to go out fighting. I think the responsibility is on us. It may not be our fault that we're in this position, but today, moving forward, now that we know, we have to kind of fight this thing head on.
It's not our fault, our circumstances. You know, we just planned it 'cause we doubt.